Hi folks, Rob the Sapper Gardener, and we are out on a really beautiful day. Still a little chilly, but it's about 60 some odd degrees today. So I'm gonna walk around the garden beds, look and see what we need to mend while the soil's workable, then figure out a few more of the garden plans for this year. One thing we need to do once we clean up here on the deck is try to make sure that we put mostly herbs up here. We've done some other things, some tomatoes, some bell peppers, some hot peppers, but we're going to try to do mostly herbs up here so that when we need those, they'll be a little bit closer at hand for cooking, for collecting and preserving. So Maggie's getting her exercise. So we still got to top off a lot of these beds out here, and we'll get that done. And we have to be careful because some of them do have some carryover perennials and biennials from last garden season. We've got some leeks down there that we didn't harvest, so we're gonna go through, and beds like these where we've dumped some old garden soil, we'll add a little bit of fresh garden soil and some amendments, some compost, and hopefully get all these ready. These will be filled with tomatoes and probably some peppers in here too. We did have a few peppers over here. We do try to practice crop rotation and soil rotation in most of our smaller containers. So we'll see what we can do over here. And we've been inspired by a lot of our friends in the community who are doing container gardening. And we've always done some container gardening, but we're gonna try to up that and do a lot more of our leafy greens in the containers to start off in the spring. We'll still use our garden beds. We've got plenty of them, but things that we know don't go deep, like a lot of our lettuce, our cabbage, our bok choys, we'll still do some in beds, especially where we can take advantage of some of the shade, like along the fence line, but we're going to do a lot more in containers too. So over here next to our basement, this area stays cool and gets a good bit of shade. So we did some radishes and beets in these black containers, and we've dumped that out. We're going to put some mulch and some garden soil over here, but these containers will get spread out too, and we'll use them again for anything that's got shallow roots in it. We dumped that soil over in this bed where we had our kale in, and I'm gonna go ahead and spread it out. I should be using a rake instead of a tiller, but we put down layers of cardboard over here. We're big fans of sheet mulching, so we'll spread the garden soil over the cardboard. We'll come back and we'll sow anything that is, again, that's somewhat shade tolerant, and take advantage of the natural shade over in this area here. So a lot of good garden plans this year. We're pacing ourselves. We're not gonna try to do everything at one time, but a little bit and often, that goes a long way in the garden. So that was a pretty quick job, and we got some perennials over here. We know we'll come back, our comfrey and our rhubarb. So we won't do too much here, just top it off with a little bit of compost and some natural fertilizers. Alright, taking a quick break from the garden work and sowing seeds to catch up on some videos. And a channel we highly recommend. Just watch Back to Our Roots. Chris and Cheryl did a garden update, and Chris and his brother-in-law showed a way to build a freestanding trellis, and I think you guys would enjoy it. So I'm gonna just recommend you go over to their channel, check it out. The first half is a garden video. The second half is building the trellis, and a really nice idea for a mobile trellis that can be relocated around in the garden. So you guys get a chance, go check them out and show them some love. So one thing we do in our garden, as much as we can, is one principle a lot of farmers and gardeners use is a crop rotation, so that you don't put the same thing in the same spot every year. And that helps if you've got pests that have laid eggs in the soil, they don't come up and they've got their favorite vegetables right there, by changing it around. So we do something similar, and we had talked about it and gotten a question from a friend of ours, Tylita 360 Cafe Notary and Garden. I'll put her title down below. But I had mentioned in one of our videos that we practice soil rotation in our containers, and I don't know if that's really a thing. That's just what we call what we do. But when we get containers that we can manage, like these, we take the soil out each year, and the ones down there, we take that soil and we dump it into beds that we know aren't going to have a similar crop to whatever was in there before, and we refill these. We either buy bag soils if we can get it on sale, because I'm cheap, or we mix our own soil. We buy cocoa core in bulk. We get perlite, vermiculite, worm casting. We get that in bulk or on sale whenever we can find it. And when we say soil rotation, we're just taking the soil out of containers, putting it someplace where we know the same crop won't be put. We refill it, and then that helps to keep pest insects from just coming right back up. Another friend of ours had mentioned just amending the pots, and that works for some people, but that doesn't work for us, because I don't know how many times we've gone into a pot and we found Japanese beetle larvae in there, and if we put the same thing that they were in there, and not just Japanese beetle, but any kind of beetle larvae, if we put the same thing in there, it's just going to give them a easier to consume food source. So if we switch out the soil and the mixes as much as possible, we think that gives us a little bit of an advantage over the pests. So we do that, and it helps keeps the soil fresh too. If you've got onions in there and you plant onions every year, the pests that want to feast on onions, they lay their eggs, they hatch, they turn into larvae or slugs. Not slugs. What do insects turn into, SK1? Well, they turn into grubs. So if the beetle grubs hatch in there and that's what they were feeding on, and the same thing is there, it just makes their job easier and our jobs harder. So yeah, when we see those, we know we need to definitely up our game and keep rotating the soil as much as possible if we can't rotate the plants. So just one tip for new gardeners: don't be afraid to dump your soils out of containers if you're not able to switch what you're putting in the containers. So just a little bit of a garden update. Not out here to do much. This is the warmest day we've had in a while. I actually just wanted to come spend some time with SK1 and Sapper pup Maggie outside of the house, because we alternated between the cold days, the snowy days, and the wet and muddy days. So today is nice. I'm actually going to check a couple of spots that were too muddy to work in, and not too muddy to work in, too muddy to work in comfortably, because I was in the Army, we worked in the mud all the time, the rain, the snow, but now we have a choice. So gonna go take a look at that and see what we can plan to get done. So on behalf of the family here at Essayons Family Garden, this is Rob the Sapper Gardener, along with SK1 and Sapper Pup Maggie, saying God bless our great country America. You, wherever you reside around the world, your garden, your harvest, your kitchen, your meal, your pets. Take care. Sapper out. And
SK1 out.